I've submitted a formal grievance at work due to concerns about my manager. Concerns around racial discrimination and harassment. There has been a pattern of this with previous workers that had left the team, and they had brought this to HR's attention. I tried to resolve informally, raised it with her manager. I was subsequently, after a few meetings, threatened to not escalate matters. I ignored that and still progressed a formal grievance. That it has initially been looked at, but the employer has decided to choose areas to look at. They're not showing me the report that they've already concluded on the issues, which was around a probation extension that had been based on lies, really. And
So, sorry, are you saying your probationary period wasn't extended?
It was extended, and the reasons for it have been falsified and are inaccurate. I've provided counter evidence for that, but they're refusing to look into that.
Right. So when you say your probationary period was extended, you were on 6 months probation, say, and it's been made 12 months. Is that what you're talking about?
It was extended for 2 months, but it was extended halfway through my probation period.
Yeah.
And I had no forewarning, etc., about it.
Yep.
So I raised issues around that, and throughout that process, I've come to learn that actually this manager sharing and speaking falsely about workers is something that's happened before and resulted in a number of people leaving before. So I'm keen, if I'm honest, I enjoy the role, but it doesn't look like my employer is going to take my concerns seriously. I have triggered early conciliation, but I just wanted to know what the best
Understood. What do you do, Sarah?
Would be. I work in a quality assurance team.
Is it private sector employer or public sector employer?
Public.
Because public sector employers are normally quite good with grievances, but is your one not being so good?
No. Not at all. They actually don't have a grievance policy.
Really?
They have something called a resolutions, which is an alternative that they use.
Okay, so it's the same thing by a different name. Is that right?
Yes, but the focus is very much on mediation. What do you want as an outcome, which appears to very much avoid.
Do they have a racial harassment policy or a discrimination policy?
No.
Are you sure? I've never heard of a public sector employer that doesn't. And
they've got equality and diversity.
Okay, so that's the same thing.
Yeah.
All right. I think we might be getting a little fixated on names here. Does the equality and diversity policy have a procedure within it for complaining about being discriminated against?
It does, but it says to refer to the resolutions policy, which is what you did.
Yeah. All right, fine.
Yes.
Are you a member of a union, Sarah?
I am, and I do have a rep, yeah.
Good. And does your union rep agree that you've been racially discriminated against?
Absolutely. They've got serious concerns about it, and I do have witnesses, although they are people that are no longer working in the company.
Well, that's a good thing, not a bad thing, because when people are still working in a company, they're usually quite reluctant to come forward and stick their head above the parapet. If they're not working, that's actually to your advantage.
Great.
So just help me, Sarah. What's your question for me?
Really, it's a case of it's the first time I've been in this situation. My concern is, will I be, in essence, forced out of my role? I've been employed for a year in this particular post, but I had worked for the employer for a further 2 years, but as an agency worker in a different role.
So you're now presumably through your probationary period?
Oh, yes.
Good.
That's from June, yes.
That's one thing to be pleased about. Well, as to whether you're going to be forced out, the answer is possibly, but if they do force you out, it's almost certainly going to be unlawful and give you the right to compensation. If you are dismissed or engineered out because you have brought a claim of race discrimination, and you've clearly done that, you've put in whether it's called a grievance or a resolution request, you've done that, and you've put in an early conciliation request to ACAS, which kicks off the formal claim process. If you're dismissed or engineered out because of your complaint of race discrimination, you'll have a cast iron claim under the Equality Act for something called victimisation. That's the legal word that means I've been treated badly because I alleged race discrimination. Yes. So legally, you're on very solid ground, and you'll actually probably find that in a way, and I know you don't want to be in this position, it's the last thing you want, but in a way, you are almost in a position where your job is protected, because any public sector employer, any HR advisor within a public sector employer is going to say, do not dismiss Sarah now. She'll have a rock solid claim against us. And no matter how much your manager might want you out, HR are not going to help your manager get you out. They'll say, Sarah's staying, she's got a job till this is all resolved. That's the reality. Now, you've put your ACAS early conciliation form in. Are you planning to proceed with a tribunal claim?
I'm prepared to.
Good,
they
good
haven't
for
made
you.
contact with the employer yet because we said we'll wait for the outcome of the grievance, but I am prepared to go all the way.
Good for you. Oh, so you haven't had the grievance outcome yet? I thought you said they brushed it under the carpet.
No, they've done a part of it, but they decided to not investigate the racial discrimination and bullying concerns I raised. So I've gone back and said, this is defective.
That's very
You need
naughty
to look
of
at
them.
this.
Yep.
Yes.
That's really naughty
Yeah.
of them. I just press on with the race claim, frankly. You having done the early conciliation certificate, you've done the bit that's going to trigger the pushback from the employer if there's going to be any. And with public sector employers, it's less common than with private sector employers because public sector employers are so cautious about this. Mm-hmm. So you've done the thing that will get you thought of as a troublemaker. Forgive me for using that language, but that's how some employers will perceive you. Having now done that, you might as well go all the way.
Yes.
So unless you can get resolution through the grievance / resolution process, I'd 100% encourage you to go to a tribunal, especially if your union is supporting you. Unions often don't support people in this situation because they think that the person's perhaps too sensitive or doesn't have the evidence. If your union's supporting you, you're in a really, really good position. I say that, obviously you don't want to be in this position, but given you are in this position, it's a good place to be with union support.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sarah, I hope that goes well. Will you call in a few months' time and let me know how it's going?
I'd love to. Thanks so much,
Good.
Daniel.